a 1951 Dodge truck. The brake lights I have are some aftermarket ones, which are kind of vintagey and look cool, but they're not original, obviously, and so in order to get them installed, we have to build some brackets. So we are going to get those fabricated, mounted onto the truck, get our lights installed, and be one step closer to taking this on the road. Let's check it out. We're in here a little closer, and where the lights are going to mount up, there's just a hole in the truck bed where this original light kind of bolted through. There's a threaded rod here that comes into the housing. I think this is original. I don't think this plastic cover is original, but I'm pretty sure the housing's original. And this rod just bolted through this hole like that. This is the back. Obviously the brake light faces me. So it fits on there with this kind of bell housing washer and nut on the other side. So I thought these looked a little janky. I wanted something new. I didn't really like this plastic look. These lenses are kind of scratched up anyway. So what I found were some cool aftermarket lights. These are called Duolamps, and they're sort of in a vintage style. Cars, particularly Ford cars in like the 20s and 30s, had these lamps, and then these sort of two-section lights. The top has a printing that says stop on it, which I think is cool. But then there's a bottom one which lights up independently, and you can use these as sort of stop lights and turn signals. This truck doesn't have turn signals. I'd like to put them in someday. But for now, we will just wire these both up as brake lights or brake lights and running lights. And then in the future, we can set the lower one to be flash and turn signal. So, because these were not designed for the truck, they don't have a way to mount up here. They just have these two sets of wires coming out, one for the top and one for the bottom light. So what we need to do is make a bracket to mount this light onto our bed here. This light comes with these two screws for mounting some kind of bracket. So that work is done for us. We just need to make a piece of metal that kind of fits on here that these things can bolt through, and that fits between these big old insulators that come off it, and then kind of folds and then bends sideways so we can put a bolt through it and mount it to the bed. So not too difficult. We'll just measure out the size of all these things and kind of draw our little shape on a piece of paper, and then trace that onto some sheet metal, cut it out to the right size, the right shape, and then bend it, paint it, and mount it up. So the one interesting thing is that we will probably have to drill a hole through the mounting bolt for these wires to go through. The light originally had this, as I say, this kind of hollow threaded rod where the wires came through, and then they just go straight into, this is kind of a hollow channel here, and it meets up with a little wiring harness which goes down and connects with the wires that are on the other side that come back from the front of the truck and hook into the brake light circuit and everything. So we'll make this little wiring harness in a separate video, but what we need to do is get the wires from the light housing into this channel. So I'm going to do something kind of similar to this. I think if I just drill a hole through a bolt, it'll be wide enough to accommodate the wires in this new light. There are two sets of wires, so it's a little thicker. I could probably slim that down because they'll share a common ground. So instead of having two sets of two, we'll just have three and have to run through. These two here are kind of a tight fit through this. I think this is a 3/8 bolt. So anyway, we'll measure those up, figure out if that will work. If it will, as I said, we'll just drill a hole through the bolt. That's going to mount the bracket into here, run the wires through. If it's not going to work, we'll drill another hole. I don't know, we'll figure that one out when we get there. So anyway, one step at a time. We need to have our bracket set up either way. So we can measure that out and get that ready to go, and then we'll measure the diameter of all these wires bunched together and see if that will fit inside the belly here of a 3/8 bolt, and then put it all together or figure out another solution. So let's get over the bench and draw out a pattern for this bracket.
So to make the pattern, I'm going to use my compass and calipers and this ruler to measure out the size and shape of the housing. In addition to the housing itself, I also want to mark out major features like the rubber bushings or grommets that protect the wires and where the mounting screws are going to go. So once I get a life-size representation of this housing on the template, I can cut out the template and then trace around that on the sheet metal in order to make my part. The sheet metal I'm using here is 16 gauge steel. To cut out this piece, I'm going to use my jigsaw. You can get jigsaw blades that go through metal. They work just fine. A little bit of cutting oil helps because this is 16 gauge steel. And a lot of the lines are straight, so I can just use my jigsaw and kind of cut it straight through. I want to cut the main piece out first before I do the little curvy parts. And because I'm using my Jankomatic workbench, also known as the truck, I have to reposition the piece a couple of times. Once I have the major shape, then I'm going to hog out these little curved parts for the rubber grommets with the jigsaw. Instead of just grinding them out, if I make a bunch of little fingers, then I can peel them out, and then I just have holes to clean up. So begins my rather inelegant process of rounding out these holes. I want to cut out to the lines which mark where the rubber grommets are that protect the wires coming out of the brake lights. And I'm using a variety of tools here because I don't have the right tool for the job, which is a spindle sander, which is round and would have made short work of this project. I don't own one. I'm probably going to buy one now because you can see I futzed this thing quite a bit and I don't end up with perfectly round circles. With those big curves cut out, I can fit the bracket onto the back of the housing, which lets me figure out where I need to drill the mounting holes. We have these two screws. That are used for mounting the headlight bracket to the mounting plate. So now we need to figure out where the holes need to go so the bolts will go through them to mount it up. With those big curves cut out of my bracket, I can figure out where to drill the holes for these mounting screws. These are the screws that attach the brake light to the mounting bracket itself. And in order to find the spacing for those, I'm going to use transfer punches, or transfer screws, which are little pointy things that screw into bolt holes. And then sticking out from the top of them is a little point. So with those things screwed into the holes and the point sticking out just proud, I can then lay my bracket on top of them, and then I can give it a quick strike with the mallet, which will transfer the punch from the pointy end of the transfer screw into the metal. And then I'm left with two little divots right in the center of where the bolt holes are. And then I can use those divots as guides for a drill bit so I know it's perfectly center and the drill bit will want to wander. Here's a close-up of the little dimple that it makes. It's pretty subtle, but it's enough for the drill bit to find it and drill your holes exactly where you want them.
Here's set up over here on our drill press. Let's drill these mounting holes. Let's put a drop of oil on this because we're cutting through steel. It's probably alright without it, but we have the oil, why not use it?
Line this bit up with my punched hole, which is a little larger than the last shot. Just helps the bit find the hole.
Easy. Got it set up for the next one. right, here we go with the second hole. No problem. This smoke coming off is a good thing. That's the oil burning off, which means it's releasing the heat from the tool and the workpiece. So it helps keep everything cool. Not a bad sign. And check out this dope little chip that came off it. This spring thing. Pretty cool. I've seen a nice chip like that in a while. And this one's got a great spiral. All right. Okay, so next step, we want to get length figured out, figure out where our bend needs to be, and then drill the hole for the mounting bolt. So now we're out back by the truck, and what we're trying to figure out is where to put the hole in our bracket here to have the screw fit through this mounting hole. So there's a couple things we need to do. We need to find a place for the screw, obviously, but this piece is going to bend because the headlight, the taillight, mounts here, and then we need to have this, the end of this thing, bend this way so that it can mount flush on our chassis here. So I think it's better to drill the hole while this thing is still flat, as opposed to when it's bent. There's not as much clearance for the drill press. And so if we can mark it here while it's still flat and drill it and then bend it, it'll be easier to get that hole done. So, but we still need to know where the bend is going to be so that we can place the bolt hole correctly. If it's too far forward, then we'll end up having it try to be mounted where it needs to bend. So what I've done is I've kind of held it up where it's going to end up being, and then drawn a line on my part, so I want this to be level with where it's going to end up, and then I draw a line on the piece, I trace it with this, and so that's going to give me the angle of this channel, and so I know I need to bend this metal piece at this angle and about in this location. So right now I just have it up against back part here, but I think that's a good distance away from this chassis for the light to sit. Where's our light? Let's see what this looks like. This is gonna look like this. So kind of tight in, pretty good. Okay. You know, looking at this now, I could just drill another hole in the back of this and then have this bracket be straight. The reason I might not is there is a hook here, like this hook. There's another one like this hook, right here, about an inch behind this thing. So if I have this bracket mounted up back there, then a bolt is going to stick out a little proud, and it's kind of in the way of this hook. How often am I going to use these things? Probably not that often, but I prefer to keep them clear and available if I can. You know, I think it's okay. I think we'll do our bend. We'll mount it up. That'll also position it a little, the whole headlight a little that way. And I think that's best because even if the bracket isn't quite in the way, the headlight itself will sit a little further back towards it, and then there's going to be wires coming out. And then you really start to, with the wires coming out the back, then things really start to interfere with a rope or whatever we might want to tie around this. So the more we can have it towards the rear of the truck, the better, which means we're back to plan A, bending this bracket. So we have our line here of where we want to bend it. So now we need to figure out, okay, once it's bent, where does the hole through hole need to be? So to figure this out, we need to know what is going to be the radius of the turn, because if I start bending it here, then this section of metal is going to be taken up by the curve, the radius in that bend, and so it won't actually be flat this way until, I don't know, somewhere there. We got 1/8 of an inch. There's ways to calculate what the radius of these turns is. I'm not going to do that because it doesn't really matter. For these purposes, if this stuff is off by 1/8 or 1/4 of an inch, only you and I are going to know. So we're just going to leave ourselves a bit of room. And I could also, no, it needs to be like that. I can't just, because if we just bend it, then it's going to be facing down. So it needs to have this angle. So, but once it has this angle, is this right? Think about this. So we know we're going to keep the width of this, so we know it's going to be in the center. Just drawing a rough line. I'll measure where the center of this is. So it's only a question of how far over do we want it. And given a bit of a radius of the turn, I'm just going to eyeball this about here. Let's see, this pencil's a little thick. It's not the most precise way of describing these lines. None of this is precise work anyway, so if you're trying to do precise work, don't do what I'm doing. Something like CAD would probably help you with that. But for our purposes, I think this will be okay. So I just picked a place here. And now I'm going to measure sort of the crosshatch of where this line meets the middle of this bracket. We're going to punch a hole and drill it out to, and I'm pretty sure this is 3/8, and it is. So we'll drill it 1/2 inch or so, just to be a little oversized. And once we have the hole drilled, then we'll bend it, and hopefully it ends up in the right place. We kind of gotta drill first, bend later, hope for the best. But it's gonna work out. It'll be fine. If things are a little off, we'll fix it later. So sometimes you gotta dive in without having all the answers.
To mark the mounting hole for the bolt, I'm just using my right angle and my calipers to roughly find a center point for this hole. It doesn't need to be perfect, this is a precision, just needs to be kind of in the middle. So I find a point, hit it with the punch to get a little dimple, and then it's over to the drill press. So here we are set up to make the bend in our bracket. We've got our mounting hole drilled, and you'll notice that the bracket is bent to one side. That's because the mounting channel on the bed is not perfectly vertical. It's actually curved a little bit outwards and inwards, but where it mounts, it's leaning a bit like that. So to compensate for that lean and to get the light coming out at a horizontal angle, out, parallel to the ground, we need to bend it an angle. So I've drawn a line in it that matches the bend of the mounting piece, and I have it mounted up here in my vise. Now I love this vise. I got this vise at Harbor Freight. I thought it would be kind of a throwaway thing. I mounted it to the truck, and this thing has been extremely versatile, extremely useful. It turns on all different angles. It's a little chintzy at times, but like very useful. I do a lot of work out here. But one thing it is not is large. So I cannot fit this this bracket all the way down past these jaws to put the bending line where the jaws are, because I don't know what you call it, but whatever the center thing is that moves the jaw, the vise jaws in and out, is in the way. I try to put the bracket down, it bumps into it. So this is basically as far down as I can go. So in order to bend it at the line I wanted to bend it at, I've put in this piece of aluminum stock so that to more or less raise the jaws up, so that now when I bend it forward, it will bend about this line. So just a little way of giving myself some extra height. I could probably just bend it like this, but for ease sake, I'm going to put a little heat in this piece to make it bend easier. It's not that thick, so it won't need too much, but it can't hurt. Nope, not good. Very hot. Yeah, okay, here's what we're gonna do. Okay, plan B, we're gonna put a little more heat in. It's still kind of tough to bend. And then I have this other piece of stock, which I'm going to attach to the back and then grip it with these pliers to give me some additional leverage when pressing it down. I don't want to just press on this top piece because this thin metal will bend before the rest of this does. I also don't want to heat that up, so we'll leave it there for now. Aha! Well, found out what not to do. Well, this means a couple of things. The first thing is we need to make a new part, which is fine. I have, before I did this, I took an outline of this part so that I can make one for the other side. So I have the shape, which I could just cut out again and drill the holes. But the next question is, once I make that second one, how am I going to bend it? Adding heat isn't the answer. And this stuff is, I'm not strong enough to just lean on it. And I don't have big bending equipment. So I'm gonna have to bend it cold, which means I need some way of getting extra leverage. Now what I could do is drill the holes in it first, drill these mounting holes in it first, and then later come back in and carve out these voids for the rubber parts in the back of the light. Because that, if I save that for later, then I will have all of this just thick metal to use leverage for bending. I don't have to put pressure through this tiny channel here, which we'll want to bend first, like that. So that could give me a little more leverage. And after I bend it, just come back and cut these out. Remember, we bent it last because we needed to drill the screw holes, or the bolt holes, and it's hard to get the drill press in with a bent piece. But now that we know where the holes are, because we had the straight thing, we can drill those first, and then bend it, and then come back in for these voids. We also need to cut these out first in order to line up where these bolt holes need to be with the transfer screws. Again, we have that worked out. So now I kind of just want to bend. I just bend this. Still have the problem of it being too long. But just for fun, what happens if we just put this in here and try to bend it? So what we're testing now is, actually, let's put in that aluminum because we know we'll need that either way. So now what we're testing is, if we have this longer piece, it gives us that much more leverage to bend it. So with a longer piece, can I bend this to the angle that I want it to be at? And if so, great. That way we know that we can just drill our holes, bend it, and then cut it to length. Let's put this in our angle here. Which was what? Like this. Close. So this shit does not want to bend, or this the corner of this aluminum is too sharp, and as it's bending, it just kind of snaps around it. Okay, well, good to know. We tested this part. We tested the bend on this piece of scrap instead of making up another thing. All right, well, with that, we're gonna wrap this video. Not how I thought it was gonna go, but these things happen. And so we will figure it out. Like we always do, these setbacks are really learning opportunities, chances to try stuff out. So yeah, we're gonna play with it a little bit and eventually figure out how to bend this thing and get through with it. We figured out a lot today. We know how to make the rest of our bracket. We have that layout down. And now all we need to do is bend it. And once it's bent, we'll be in good shape. So we'll wrap it from there. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please like it if you did, and subscribe to it if you want to see more like it. Feel free to add comments, explain to me what I ought to be doing next time, because I'm learning as I go. So with that, we will see you in the next video, and stay groovy.